All right, so welcome tonight, everybody. We're excited that Treehouse Recovery has asked Tina C. to join us. Tina, like many of us, was blindsided by her son's substance abuse at a young age and thrown into the chaos that addiction brings and began to fight to advocate for her son's recovery. Tina, thank you for joining us tonight. And if you'd like to start, please share with us how you came to know about your child's addiction and where that led you.
Well, thanks for having me, ladies. Um, so I will get choked up, and I apologize. So, we got a call that he was arrested. He was in a town that he shouldn't have been in, and he was arrested. Never been arrested before, and he said he was arrested for, I think it was a class X felony, and I didn't know what that was because they didn't know what that was. Well, here come to find out this was a heroin. He had heroin in possession. He was in not one of the good towns. She had no business being in that town. I don't know why he was there. Well, I'm sure I know why he was there now. He was probably scoring. Um, and that's when the nightmare began. He was 21 years old. Um, he had never been in trouble in school. We had never had any discipline issues. He was always involved with health and fitness. I mean, he would go out with his buddies, they'd play cards. I knew they would drink. I knew they would do recreational marijuana. Never did I ever expect to have this situation. So once he was arrested with that, then the nightmare began. We had 5 years of in and out of treatments, other arrests. Um, full treatments, full hospital treatments, partial treatments, dealing with parole officers, dealing with attorneys. We had an arrest in 3 different counties. I had to hire 3 different attorneys. Um, I actually just had to go through my notes because when you're dealing with something like this, you don't always remember. Sometimes it's easier not to remember. So I actually just wrote down all the treatment facilities he was in, and he was in a total of 6 full-time treatment facilities. And he was in a series of outpatient treatments, inpatient treatments, private counseling, and with a psychiatrist. So it became a hamster wheel of the ins and outs of learning the different things of recovery. And it was challenging. It was challenging. I've always said that, this drug addiction has been 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Um, I have to say that I wasn't always believing of what the professionals told me, and I don't know if it's because I'm stubborn. I don't know. Um, I didn't have any physical violence with my son. I didn't have any of that. I mean, it was just a matter of that he just would just use, and he would just be like a ball, a ball in the bathroom. He'd go in the bathroom and not come out for hours. I found a blood spurt on the ceiling. So I knew he was using, after the full breadth and depth of where he's at in addiction because he hid it so well. And then after he was arrested, it was like, the cat was out of the bag. And it did get worse. It did get worse. But we just kept pushing, kept pushing, kept pushing. And he was always willing to go to whatever we wanted to do. He was never argumentative. We didn't have any, it was never a fight. There was never any of that. The addicts are very charming when they want to be very charming. They can charm the diamonds off your ears if you needed them. He was always able to get jobs. It was just amazed me. He'd get fired from a job and he'd have another job the next day. It was just amazing. Um, so we went through the process with him, and it wasn't easy. And I know that uh, you have your other children, and your other children sometimes fall to the wayside because the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So all the efforts and the money and the finances and the time go into the child that's sick, and then your other children fall to the wayside and feel slighted. So you're always trying to do that balancing act. um, I know what we ended up doing is that because I realized that part of the problem is that we were codependent. I've never done drugs. I drink socially. There's never been arrests here. There's not. We don't have domestic violence. We don't have any of that. I know things are different other places. But my son and I were very codependent. And actually, as we went through all these different facilities, and you're dealing with these parole officers, because remember now he was arrested many times, and the one time he was actually arrested, and I hired another attorney, and he told me, which was really the truth, but it's hard to accept as a mom, is that he would tell me, Tina, he's safe, he's not using, and you know where he is, which were all true. Um, I remember bringing him into a rehab Christmas Eve, and I brought him in, and I cried all the way there. So I know it's tough, ladies. I know it's tough. Um, all I can tell you is that, you just got to keep pushing. Got to keep pushing. I know some days are harder than others. I didn't have now I'm going back so I just asked my son what his sobriety date was. And I knew I put him on a plane Super Bowl Sunday. I didn't remember the exact year, but it was 2016. It was February 9th, 2016. It was Super Bowl Sunday. And I shipped him out to Treehouse. And it was just he was the last time before this he was in another treatment facility. He was aging out of our insurance, and it's like, you keep asking for help, and then the help was like, well, I'll try this, well, I'll try that. And I understand that people in the facilities, that's their job, that's their Monday through Friday, their 9 to 5. I get it. But we as moms, we live it. It's every day. We wake up, we breathe it, we go to sleep with it, we wake up in the night. It's consuming. So when I was finally able to get him into this last rehab, and it was locally, and I thought, you know what, I need a magic bullet. I need a magic bullet. So I had got him in. It took me 3 days to get him in because he wasn't violent. I couldn't get him out of the house. Took me 3 days to get him in. I got him into this facility not far from our home. And the day I got him in, I called and I asked who the director was. I called her. I spoke with her. And I said, listen, and I told her the scenario with my son. And I said, you know what? I said, I'm running out of time. I need help. What else? What else are my options? Now, by this time, remember now, we had been in and out of jail. We had been in and out of private counseling. We had been in and out of, all these other facilities. And the director said in passing, she says, well, tell me a little bit about your son. Okay, so I told her about my son. I said, well, he's physically active, and he likes to work out, which is kind of an oxymoron. You just don't understand it. How can somebody putting drugs in your system want to work out? But that's what he did. And she says, there's this new place. She says, she was telling me about it, and she says the name of it is Treehouse. I said, really? I said, tell me a little bit about it, because I went through a lot of different facilities. And she says, well, this is a new place that opened up. And she says, it's in California. And she says, I can probably make a call for you. I said, really? She says, yeah, we can talk about getting him into that later. I said, okay, thank you very much. I got off the phone with her. I went online. I looked at everything that program had to offer. It was completely different from what we had been used to, what I had him in. I called up. I talked to this young man. I still don't know this young man for the day. I know his name. And that was the first day he was in rehab on that last facility. By the time he was discharged, so, when you get to that third week, they're looking to take your loved one into their sober living. And I don't mean to sound jaded, but, there's money there. Because if they take them into sober living, then they can, of course, they want to help them, but there's money to get them into their system to keep keep your loved one in their system so that they can get those dollars. So when I told the director, it was like she had never mentioned again. Now, mind you, I'm going for family counseling. I'm going for the meetings. You have to go in order to see your son. So it was literally 3 days before you're supposed to get out. She says, were you considering putting, he probably needs to go sober living. I said, he's already set. He's going to California. So he was released. We packed his bag. and he was on the plane the next day, and he was in California. He hasn't been home since. So I can tell you that was the best thing that happened for us as a family, for us, for me as a mother, for my son, um, because him and I had to be separated because we were codependent. He was my little buddy. He's my little guy. He was my buddy. He helped me cook. What do you need help with, Mom? He was always the easygoing one. So we got to go out. Come on, Jenny, you want to go out? It was like he was the easygoing one. Um, we had to separate that. He had to go be a man. He had to learn how to be a man, and I had to learn to let him go. And that's when he got his life back. That's when he did well. That's when he flourished. He had to get away from where he lived, away from the people he was used to, from the town he grew up in. He had to start new. So everything changed when he went to California. And he did put in the hard work. I mean, I give him that. And you know what? It's like, I know it can be exasperating. There's many nights I cried. Um, but, I always knew there was hope. And I believed it. Um, and I'm not one to hear I don't want to always hear all the negative stories. I want to hear the positive. Now, I know there's negative stories. I know they're there. I know you ladies have probably experienced them. I've had some very terrible nights with my son. Um, I've lived them. I know what they are. I like to think that, our kids don't want to be like this. Our kids don't want to be like this. And I have to believe that it is a genetic, and I believe it. I truly do believe it. It's a genetic predisposition. Um, and this is not what they choose to do. It's unfortunate. This is a disease that's fighting to live within them. So you just got to hope that your child is stronger than the disease. Um, and I keep thinking of, I put in my little bio about the air mask on the airplane. And I truly believe that because you have to learn, because what happens is your addicted child will take everything from you. They will take everything from you if you allow that. And it's like you can't continually give and give and give. You have to take care of yourself. You have to do for yourself. You have to do for your partner, your husband, your other children. You have to find joy in things because life does go on. And you can't do service for your loved one that's struggling with an addiction if you're not at least trying to help take care of yourself, whatever that is. Whether you need to go to counseling, whether you need to talk to a professional. It you have to do for you. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Well, we thank you for sharing that with us, Tina, and I'm so proud of you. And I know it's hard to kind of feel that sometimes. Can y'all hear me okay, Tina?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, okay, it's telling me it's not. Okay. So I can feel you and your pain and your sorrow and how deeply this has affected you and I'm so happy that he's made it through. So to start us off, and I do have a question in the chat as well, but can you share with us um, when you first found out, right, what was happening? Was your son always willing to get help? Was he ready?
Yes, yes. Well, let's put it this way. He'd give me the lip service. Yeah, yeah, mom, I want to get better. Yeah, yeah, mom, I want to get better. So he did. He did. But there was still times he would tell me what I wanted to hear. But I would have to open up. And the awful thing is you just don't know how you're going to find your son. Every morning I would check on him. Every night I would check on him. It's like, is he breathing? It's like, it's that awful gut wrenching feeling. He always told me he wanted to get better. And I think there was always a part of him that did want to get better. I just think sometimes at some point the addiction was stronger than his will was.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sharon has a question. So how did you let go of your addiction to your adult son? So with being um
Um, well, it's a funny story. So not funny, but um my son was in full thrown addiction. My mom was critically ill, terminally ill, and I'm the youngest of four kids, and I was always closest with my mom. My mom never, she asked me if I would always take her. So my mom we had hospice in my house for my mom. And uh, my son would come down the steps. My living room was set up as her hospice bedroom. And I had it was so we had a lot going on. We had my son full blown addiction. I've got my mom with hospice. It was a lot.
Mhm.
And my mom was cognizant. She was talking. You know what I mean? She was good. She was good for a few days. And my son comes down the stairs and he peeked around. It was like he was like a little boy. Now this time he's 21, 22 years old. And he peeked around the stairs and he seen my mom in the hospice bed. And uh, he shriveled up and he ran upstairs. And I'm like, I was already committed to have my mom here. I couldn't, we're gonna get through this. And then he would, when she was better and she was up and she was talking, and she would see him, and if you're familiar with heroin addiction, you're not fluid. You're like jerky. You're like jerky. And he would try to talk to her, and he thought he was being normal. And my mom looked at me. My mom says, "Tina, what's wrong with him?" I
Mhm.
had never told any of my family what I was going through. None of them. Didn't just because there was a lot of stigmatism. I have a lot of police people in my family, my brother, a brother-in-law. I have a lot of military. I have a lot of, nobody was going to understand the fact, well, he's just a drug addict. Well, no, he's not really. Yeah, he has an issue. But they're like throwaway people. They're like throwaway people.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to divulge that. I didn't want to answer the questions. I didn't want to talk about it. But my mom, in her wisdom, she looked at him, she looked at me, he walked away, and she said, "Tina, tough love. It's time for tough love now." And
Wow.
that's how I shipped them off, because I
Yeah.
knew I had to get him out of here, because he was the baby. We babied him. My daughters would call him, "Oh, the cherub." Oh, he's the cherub. He's the favorite child. He's the cherub. Well, he never argued with me. He was like, "Yeah, mom, whatever you want." He was my yes man.
Yeah.
So it was truly my mom in her state that was able to pick up on that and says, it's time for tough love. And she asked me, she says, "What's wrong with him?" I said, "Mom, he's using drugs." Now my mom was from the depression, and she said, "He needs help." I said, "We've done a lot of help, ma. Done a lot of help, in and out, in and out, a lot of money, a lot of time." And she says, "Time for tough love." I said, "Okay." And then that was my decision. I knew I had to get him. I had to get him out and away. As much as I wanted him with me, he could never survive. He could never thrive. Could never thrive here. We had to be separated.
Yeah.
And that was how that ended up. That was how that happened.
I can relate to that. My son's the same way, and he really is. And the feeling, with him is the same for me. So when you made that decision, was he okay with that? Was he willing? Was he
He
just
was
ready
he
to go?
he was scared. I was scared. We were all scared. Because now
Hmm.
here, what happens if he doesn't make it and he's across the country? I can't readily get there and go save him. How am I going to save my son? He's across the country now. I mean, I could drive. I could drive to Rockford. I could drive to Aurora. I could drive to. I drive. I get in the car and I go. California's a whole different ballgame. But I have to say the intake people at Treehouse are phenomenal,
Yeah.
phenomenal. So as they spoke with me, they spoke with him. So they got everybody on the same page, and we moved everybody to the goalpost. Everybody got to that goalpost. So he was looking forward to the physical activity, the new life, the California living. Um,
Um,
yeah. So and he's done really well there.
that's awesome.
What?
Okay,
How?
so Sharon, yeah, what did you do when he left? How did
Cried a
you
lot.
help
I cried a
yourself to
lot.
be okay? You
Cried
cried
a
a lot?
lot. I went to the gym. I went to the gym. I went to the gym, and that's what I did. I used to run a lot of 5Ks.
I see that.
And
That's
then,
awesome.
and we talked. We talked all the time. He told me what he was doing, and he was out there. That treehouse facility is a 5-month program,
Hmm.
and I knew he was doing well there. So we got him into sober living there, and then he became a house manager, and then he got a job, and then so life started to take a form of normality for him. He started to make friends. He had a living. He had a life. So um, then I just booked my vacations to go see him.
That's
So, but
awesome.
I did give him. I didn't go see him for actually for probably 2 years. I would fly him home. I would fly him home, and I would only fly him home for a few days, and then he would go back. So I didn't bring him home long. He did not associate with many people when he came back home.
Right.
It was
So he
family.
was ready. Yeah, that's
He was
awesome.
ready. He was
Good.
ready.
Good,
Yeah, he
good.
was ready. And I always told him, and I've even said this for myself, I don't go out there and preach my story to people. But if somebody's talking to me about their son, and I have had this come up, and they're telling me that they have a problem, I will tell them about my story.
Hmm.
But I don't go out and preach it to everybody. Not everyone wants to
Yeah.
hear it. Not everyone, but, and I always tell my son, I said, you need to just say, you are in such a position of grace. I said, you
Hmm.
need to pay this forward.
Hmm.
Always. You need to pay this forward. So,
Yeah. And that's the beauty of our group. It's a safe place.
yeah,
You don't have to worry about the judgment
right,
or shaming
right,
or anything like
right,
that because we're all the same.
right.
So that's beautiful. So Rose says, I'm not sure how old your son is, but if he asked you to move back with you today, will you say no?
Okay, so my son is just turned 33. His first arrest when he was 21, was never arrested before. We were in and out of rehabs for 5 years. And then I shipped him out to California. So if my son wanted to be home, I would take him home in a heartbeat. I don't think he'll ever come back here, though. This is not his home anymore. That would
And he
never
knows
happen.
that. He,
He
he's
knows that.
he's wanting to have the life that he has. That's
Oh yeah,
good.
no, no, no. When actually I had two rotator cuff surgeries, and he was the only one that could work remote. And I said, Johnny, I need help. Can you come help your mama? So this is
Yeah.
now again, this is the co addiction.
Hmm.
And he said, yeah, I can do that, man. So he did. He drove me because I couldn't drive. I had to go to the doctors. He worked remote. He set out my medicines. So he was here a month, and he went home. So, but it's a different.
Yeah, it's different dynamic. He
It's
knows
different.
he's
It's
going
different
home.
now. We're adults. We're functioning. Now, I still cry when he leaves. He knows that. He
Sure.
calls me a crybaby. Um, yeah, he calls me a crybaby. You always cry. So, yeah, I know. I said, but it's okay. I always tell him when I drop him off at the airport. I said, I like arrivals better than departures.
Yeah.
Um, but I think he would be. He's strong enough to be home. He's a very mentally strong, well-grounded person, individual. He's
Correct.
better than I am. I think
Right.
because he's worked on this so
Yeah.
much. He's
He's
done a
had to
lot
work
of work.
hard for it. Yep. He recognizes all the work he had to do where we kind of
Yes.
tend to take it for granted,
Yes.
things
Oh, he
that
put a
come
lot of
to
work in. Put a lot of work in. And the beautiful thing with Treehouse is that they're based in physical activity, a lot of it, and it's a whole person modality.
us.
So, and for him there was that physical component. He needed that physical component. And I didn't realize this, one of the multitude of the places we went to, and we had to go to you got to go to your mandatory parent meetings if you want to see your child. And I
Hmm.
didn't
Hmm.
realize that actually physical activity grows back the neurons in the brain to heal the brain. And that's the quickest way to heal the brain from addiction is to do
Hmm.
physical activity. So, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is why this program works so well for him.
Yeah. And it's
So,
interesting you say that because I know my son does that. He's a yo-yoer through in and out of jail. And that activity, that physical activity is the only thing that brings him back.
hmm,
And like you said, it's a chemical thing in the brain,
yeah,
and
yeah,
he's he gains 60 pounds and he looks wonderful and he feels better, and that kind of gives him that jump start.
right,
So
right.
Rose says, thanks for sharing your story. It's super tough not to be codependent. It's neat to say you do have a relationship with him today based on something apart from that codependency.
Correct.
And
I do.
then, and
I do.
Sharon said, I didn't know that about physical activity. And that is true,
Hmm.
Sharon. It's a big deal. I mean, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And especially, and I know when they start sometimes in jail, it's to keep them busy, but then they feel better and then they're ready to come out and conquer something else. So
Right. Right.
totally get that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Tina, we sure do appreciate you giving us your time and sharing your story and your insight. And it's always wonderful to hear somebody else's story and
Right.
we pick up things along the way and it helps us just every
Right.
bit every day trying to deal with our own. And
Right.
so we
Yeah,
certainly appreciate.
it's tough. It's tough, but yeah, this is what I can tell you, ladies. Make sure you do yourself. Whether you run a 5K, you go take a knitting class, you go have a glass of wine, whatever you need to do. And it's like not everyone has forgiven my son. We
Right.
still have the family components where my one daughter won't talk with him. And I would used to think that we'd have a close family, but these things do have, you cast that stone, it does have lasting results. And you just got to keep working and just try to keep moving. It's like, one day it's going to be okay. One day it's going to be okay. And I keep telling myself that. And I prayed a lot.
Yeah. And it may be a different kind of okay, but it's still okay.
It's okay.
So
Not everyone's going to be, yeah. And I'm, ladies, and I'm more than happy to talk to anybody who wants to talk to me. Because I know it's a very tough, can be a very long, lonely road.
right. Well, we sure do appreciate you, Tina, so much. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you for having me, Terry.